Hey, what's up, everybody out there in podcast land? How are you, everybody? This is Mike Jamison, and this is the introductory episode of Pop Culture Basement. I am here actually with Hobbs, my cat, who decided to come downstairs in the basement with me as I recorded this episode. So you might hear him scratching up against my laptop or my microphone, or you might hear me shooing him away. Try to get him to stop doing that. But I am staying on brand that I am down in the basement for this introductory episode. And I had this whole introduction mapped out, planned out. I had notes where I was going to talk about my childhood and the paneling on my wall and how people of my generation grew up with that type of paneling and how the TV shows and movies and books and music that I listened to down in my basement as a child in a row home in Southwest Philadelphia helped to shape my life. And I guess I'm kind of giving you the short version of the pages and pages and pages of notes that I took. I threw those notes away because I realized something tonight as I sat down in the basement of my suburban home where I now consume movies and television shows and books and music. And I sat down here with my son and watched 3.5 episodes of the new Disney Plus Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man show. It was 3.5 episodes because he was starting to fall asleep. It was a little after 12 o'clock a.m. And I told him to go to bed and we would finish up tomorrow. But what I realized is that much like Rust Cole said, was it Rust Cole? I can't even remember. In True Detective, time really is a flat circle because I did spend most of my childhood and my early adulthood, my teen years and my early 20s, uh, consuming pop culture, consuming movies, consuming TV shows, reading, listening to music. And most of the time, I was doing this down in the basement of my house. My basement was like not only my fortress of solitude where I felt safe and felt like I could truly be myself, but it was also the place where I unlocked the wonders of fantasy and science fiction and mystery. And this was all through the books that I read and the TV shows that I watched and the movies that I watched. And what I want this show to be, and that's what this episode is. This is not going to be a full episode. What I want the show to be, this is the to be totally honest, this is the first time I am doing a podcast solo and recording myself solo. So if you like this, I hate to tell you, it's the show is not going to be like this uh, every month, which I'm hoping to do an episode every month. If you don't like this, then you'll be happy to know that the show is not going to be like this because I am hoping to get guests on to talk about, uh, well, with some episodes, it will be our shared obsessions and shared interests in certain topics, and other episodes, it is going to be on topics that I don't have a lot of experience in, but that the guests do, and I, I want to learn from them and hear their experiences with the pop culture that they grew up with. And that's what I really want this show to be. I have done a few other podcasts and I've enjoyed myself. But one thing I have realized is that I am not an expert in anything. And it doesn't mean that everybody who does podcasts are experts in the stuff that they talk about, be it comic books or movies or music or B movies. But this show is not going to be about being an expert and knowing the background and talking about the movies or TV shows or books and going chapter by chapter or scene by scene. It's going to be about what this pop culture that we talk about each episode meant to my guests and to me. Uh, we will obviously talk about the backgrounds of certain movies and TV shows and books and how projects came about and how they were written or how they were filmed. But I also want to talk about how you discovered them, how you consumed this pop culture and how it shaped your life and shaped you, because I know that most of my personality and a lot of my beliefs have been shaped by the pop culture that I grew up with. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess that's for some people to decide. I think it's a good thing. Um, but yeah, I want what I realized again is I had all these notes written out, and I thought it was really good what I wrote. Maybe one day I'll read it and see what other people think. But sitting on my couch now as a 50-year-old with my 13-year-old in the basement of the house that I own with my wife, watching a comic book TV show with my son, and all I can do is think back to being a 13-year-old myself and going down to my basement in Southwest Philadelphia, going to my old TV where you had to. We didn't have a remote control, so you had to turn it on manually and turn the channels manually, um, and turn on the UHF station and watch the 1967 Spider-Man cartoon that would rerun occasionally, or watch the real Ghostbusters, and to also share those experiences with my dad, with my brother, with my mom. My dad introduced my brother and I to things like the Rankin Bass animated Hobbit. He also, my dad was a very big reader, so we used to have a bookcase. This was this was in the early '80s before we kind of updated our basement. And when I say updated, that means it became really '80s. So when I was younger, it was still very much late '70s decor. But I remember my dad had a bookcase down in our basement, and he had the old paperbacks of the Lord of the Rings. And some people will know what I'm talking about. With these are editions from the late '60s, I believe, and they had these really interesting, very cool illustrations on the covers. That, of course, me being the wuss that I am, scared the living shit out of me. But now I look back and I wish I've actually asked him, and he doesn't know where they are. Probably putting them away and then moving from their house years ago. They were probably lost. But although they they filled me with dread as an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, there was still that curiosity and that wonder that I felt just looking at those covers and not even knowing what was in those books. Like I said, this was the early '80s, so it was way before the movies came out. And then on, I'm hoping that this isn't just a memory I've formed in my head, but I'm pretty sure it was a rainy Saturday afternoon. And in Philadelphia, we used to have an old UHF station, channel 48, that was much like the UHF stations in the '80s, that they showed reruns of sitcoms and older movies and horror movies on Saturday nights. But I can remember sitting in the basement with my dad and my brother and watching the Hobbit animated TV special from Rankin and Bass, and again feeling that same mixture of not only wonder and amazement, but also fear. I think before the 2000s Lord of the Ring movies, I lived in deathly fear of Gollum because of the way Gollum was portrayed in the animated Lord of the Rings. And now I've had the pleasure of showing my kids and instilling that fear in them, which is great. It's always great as a parent to pass your childhood traumas down onto your own children. But I can also remember in our basement watching Yellow Submarine for the first time, and that was one of my first exposures to the Beatles before I even knew who they were. I think everybody almost is born with hearing Beatles songs, so I'd probably heard Beatles songs already in my young life, but that was my first exposure to them. And now, as I talk about exposing my childhood traumas and passing them down to my children, I also know that I'm also sharing my interests, especially, and I will admit, especially with my son, who is my firstborn and who is the one who is more closely aligned with my interest in comic books and comic book movies and sports. And that's another thing that I would like to get into with this podcast is talking this will be something that I will get into in upcoming episodes. But I grew up, as I mentioned, in a row home in Southwest Philadelphia. I grew up 2 doors away from my aunt and uncle, my grandmother and grandfather, and 3 cousins who all lived in the same house. So we were always together. So it was not only just my family of me and my brother and my mom and dad, but it was also my aunt and uncle and their 3 kids and my grandmother and grandfather, which was actually a pretty awesome way to grow up. Um, but this again was the early to mid to late 80s before cable was everywhere. So we had a regional cable channel in Philadelphia called Prism, which showed movies, but it also showed Philadelphia Phillies, Philadelphia Flyers, and Philadelphia 76ers games. So back in the mid 80s, the only really good team in Philadelphia was the Flyers, and my family uh, were around when the Flyers won their championships in the 70s. So we were very much a Philadelphia Flyers hockey family. And we would all gather in my aunt's basement because she had Prism and watch Flyers games, especially when they were in the playoffs and going to championships. And those are some of the greatest memories of my life. I can remember my grandmother would sit on the steps that would lead down into the basement because she was too nervous to come all the way down. But even as we grew up, in my parents' basement, in the basement of my house, we would have friends over to watch Sunday football games all the time with my parents there, and all of me and my brother's friends all gathered in the basement watching the Eagles inevitably lose a conference championship game. I'm recording this actually on the night of the Eagles Super Bowl parade. So that is another thing that my son and even my daughter have shared, that we have been down in the basement of our house and we watched a couple of the Eagles playoff games. So again, it is a total full circle of my childhood into now. And I don't want to get too much into it because, as I said, this is an introductory podcast, an introductory episode, and I'd like to, in future episodes with various guests, get into it more deeply. But I know growing up, not only just myself in that basement, consuming all of the pop culture and sports and music and everything, but with family, with friends, it shaped me, and now I'm hoping that it's helping to shape my kids also. My daughter and I had a daddy daughter date night one night down here, and she and I watched Grease. I introduced her to Grease for the first time. So that was fun. And what is also kind of weird is I'm also at that age now where my son, who is 13, has a girlfriend. So, which is kind of weird to think because I feel like I was just in seventh and eighth grade uh, and just discovering girls, and now my son has a girlfriend. But that's for that's another discussion. But when she will come over here, they will come down here and watch Netflix or watch movies and stuff like that. And I'm kind of relegated to the family room with my wife to watch something. So, you could see the circle branching out now even more because I remember being in the basement with girls that I was going out with in seventh, eighth grade, high school, or sometimes down there with my brother watching movies, maybe doing a little more. Don't have your mind in the gutter. It wasn't that bad. I was a good Catholic boy. Um, but yeah, so this, as I've rambled for, let me look on here. I can't even tell. Hopefully it's over 10 minutes. This is not going to be a very long episode. As I said, it's an introductory episode. And I just wanted to introduce to anybody who is listening to this and let them know what this podcast is going to be about. Um, Uh, I'm excited to talk about things that I love with guests that equally love the material. And I'm excited to talk about things that I don't really have a lot of experience with, but the guests that I have on are excited to introduce it to me. So I hope that I'm going to find some listeners to go with me along for the ride, and hopefully they will give me something that I can discover. I would love to get feedback and have listeners tell me if they'd like to come on and talk about something that they grew up watching or reading or listening to, and tell me also what their experience was. How did they consume their pop culture, and what are the memories they have from their childhood in consuming it? I just think I think that's so much fun to just learn about shared experiences, and also to learn about how it was different for people. I'm very excited to get into that with my guests. So this is going to be the Pop Culture Basement podcast, as I said. Um, my name is Mike Jamison. I would assume most people would know that if they're listening to this because they probably heard me on other podcasts, but maybe you just came across it somehow. So yes, the Pop Culture Basement podcast. I'm your host, Mike Jamison. I am on Twitter at This Lightsaber Kills Fascists, so you can find me there. I'm also on Bluesky at This Lightsaber Kills Fascists. I don't think I'm going to create specific Twitter or Bluesky handles for the show. If anybody wants to get in touch with me or give me suggestions for the show, they can find me on there. Um, After some of the episodes are posted, please share with friends. Uh, Write a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps to get not only get the word out, but it helps to get the algorithm out there, and it helps to get the show more popular. It helps to get more eyes on the show, which would be great. Um, and yeah, just like I said, look for me on Twitter or Blue Sky if you have any suggestions for the show. If you would like to come on and be a guest on the show, or if you just want to let me know that I'm doing a horrible job or doing an okay job, I would love to know because, like I said, I am definitely not an expert at this. There are a million podcasts out there that I listen to and have been inspired by that do amazing work in researching and going through films or TV shows scene by scene, episode by episode. And not that I don't want to do that. I would love to be as good as they are, but I want this show to be a little bit different and just be about our love for the material we're going to be talking about and how we came to that material and how it is still affecting us now. With me as a 50-year-old, I'm talking to a guest who's a 25-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old. I would love to hear those stories, and I'm hoping that the people who listen to this show enjoy hearing those stories too. So, like I said, this was the introductory episode. I will be back. I think I have an idea of what the first episode will be, but I don't want to jinx it by saying what exactly it's going to be. I'll put something out there, like I said, on Blue Sky or Twitter. Yes, I'm still calling it Twitter. You cannot make me call it something else. Um, Before that first episode comes out, but I'm very excited about it. And I hope everybody who did listen to this enjoyed this introduction, and I hope I piqued your interest, and I hope you will be listening in the future. And I hope my cat stays over there. I'm looking at him right now, sleeping, and does not come over here and knock over my microphone. Thank you guys for listening, and as I said, I am excited to have you guys along on the journey with me. Thanks.